We're back with another episode of Book of Experts TV, and today we're talking about sales, success, and self-leadership. We're going to talk with our guest who's done TEDx, been on stages for TEDx, is an author, actually hosts his own show as well, and a lot of fun. We're talking about playful prosperity today on Book of Experts TV.
Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
Tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me. Jason Goldberg, aka JG, welcome to Book of Experts TV. I'm excited to have you on. We've got a TEDx speaker here who's talked about, I want to make sure I get the title right, the How to Manufacture Fascination. So winner on a title just with that alone. Author of Prison Break, host of The Not So Serious Life. And you weren't actually in prison, were you? I guess I didn't ask you that before the show.
Funny enough, I actually I did go do some mentoring in a prison, but I was not incarcerated. But I was incarcerated in my own mind, which for some people is even worse.
Right. I know you've got a subtitle in there that explains it a little bit more. Yeah. Today, we're talking about playful prosperity. And I love that angle because yes, it's going to be about sales. Yes, about success. You talk about self-leadership, but the playful aspect, I want to hear more, and you got it going. So let's dive into how did you get to the JG that you are today? Because I know enough that it wasn't always that way.
Yeah, no, I had a lobotomy when I was 12. And, it's really funny, man. Like it's funny even when you said that, and you kind of like mentioned to me before we went live was about how like my brand developed and all that stuff. And dude, it was so much more of a trying to manage other people's impression of me, right? Like we hear this buzzword a lot, authenticity, right? Be authentic, be yourself, do all these things. And it's often taught and talked about as a strategy. It's something you are supposed to do in order to connect with your audience. And I have my own definition of authenticity that I've developed over the years because of my own struggles of trying to figure out who the hell I am and how to put myself out there in the world, is that authenticity is what's left when I stop trying to manage your impression of me. It's something I unlearn, as opposed to something I do or I learn. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of, this successful person looks like this, I need to look like that. This successful person does this, I need to do that thing. And it's not that these people don't have clues that I can be like, oh, that's interesting. I think I would like to do their thing in my way. That's all great. But what I was doing in the interim was that I was not trusting myself. I was what I say delegating or outsourcing my self-trust, thinking that everybody else knew how to be me more than I knew how to be me. And so that was a real process that had involved a lot of dark night of the soul, a lot of shadow stuff, a lot of not so playful prosperity for me to really start owning that about myself. And that's kind of been what I've leaned into, in the last 6 years of having this particular business.
Man, you had a lot of good stuff. I want to make sure I get this quote right because this is gold nugget stuff. So authenticity is what's left when you stop trying to manage what you think of me.
Yeah, when I stop trying to manage your impression of me, what's left
your
over
impression.
is authenticity. Yeah,
I think. Yeah. I want to make sure I get that. I'm actually I'm typing it up in the comments because I want people to see this.
Amazing.
If I could type in, there we go. So good. We just pushed that out through the channel. I want people to see this because I think that's such a great way of describing it. And you're right. Authenticity is a word that is just getting thrown around way too much. I'm actually going to go with your definition from now on. So I'm throwing out all the others. I love that. What was the inflection point in that period of time for you?
Yeah, dude, it's so funny, right? Because a lot of people will ask, like, how do you find this thing, right? And it's not a finding, it's an uncovering, or maybe it's a rediscovering, but we all know who we authentically are at our core. The challenge is that is, for better or worse, kind of beat out of us as we get older. And as we grow up, and I talk a little bit about this in my TEDx talk, that our creativity, our imagination, all these things get remixed and repurposed into all the problems we have to solve in our world. It's never for play anymore. It's always to fix the heavy, serious thing. And so what I tell people to look at all the time, and this was kind of a part of exploration for me, was I say, look back at two things in your life from your childhood. Number one, what did you get praised, approval, and validation for? And number two, what'd you get in trouble for? Because those two things will point to massively valuable ways that you could be showing up in the world. For me, I know that what I got in trouble for all the time was being the center of attention, was being the talkative kid, was being the one who entertained people, was being the one who would put on these little shows to get people to laugh. And while that got me in trouble when I was a kid, and my mom would get these notes home from school that says, Jason is such a bright kid, if he would just shut up, she would get these notes. And so it's looking back at that stuff and noticing where, we all have these beautiful hardwood floors of the essence of who we are. And at some point, this ugly shag carpeting gets laid over the top of it. And then we go on this quest to try to find what our essence is. But really, we just got to pull back the shag carpeting and everything's there. So for me, I wish it was that simple. I did kind of realize some of those things through going through that kind of an exercise for myself. But honestly, dude, when I got into this business, the kind of knowledge broker business, right? Being the face of a business, coaching, speaking, online education, I was so obsessed, or my ego was so obsessed with being known for something very specific. I need to be able to hang my hat on this thing, be the all-knowing expert, be the guy, right? Tony Robbins has his thing, Byron Katie has her thing, everybody has their thing. What's my thing gonna be, right? A process, a methodology, something I can really say like, look how smart I am. And so I was all this obsession about what I was going to be known for. And I was trying all these different messages. And then I would go on stage and speak, or I'd do, a video, or I'd coach somebody. And the feedback I would get would be something along the lines of, I don't know what it is about you, but when I see you speak, or I hear you speak, or I watch something from you online, I just feel this like energy, this lightness, this levity, this joy, this play. And me in my naivete and a slight stupidity and ego was like, no, that doesn't matter. Tell me how smart I am. But tell me how that model was the smartest thing you've ever heard in your life, and it's going to change your life. And dude, I fought this so hard. And it honestly was not until I remember it exactly, March 25th, 2017. So not that long ago, relative to my life. I was on a book tour for Prison Break. And it was my very last morning talk show interview. I did a bunch of talk show interviews, and this was on Good Day Sacramento, morning show in Sacramento. And the anchor who was interviewing me is a guy named Cody Stark, no relation to Tony Stark. I asked, he's not, no relation to Iron Man. But we did our interview. It was a great interview, so much fun. And then they went to commercial, and then they come over to take the mic off me and everything. And Cody comes over and he's like, dude, there is just something about you, man. Like, just there's so much joy when you share what it is you're sharing. Like the AV people that were miking me up had mentioned it. The co-anchors mentioned it. The guests in the green room mentioned it. And I feel it in interviewing you, right? He's like, it's just such an amazing thing. And for whatever reason, Tobin, like in that moment, it finally hit me like, oh, crap. That's my gift. It's not being the smartest guy with the most original methodology. It's the essence of who I was bringing into these conversations. Right? It's really what, instead of worrying about what I was going to be known for, I realized the key is to realize what I was going to be known for activating in other people. What was I going to have them feel after an interaction with me? And to me, when we find that, we can really center on the 90% of us that makes the biggest difference in interaction with people, which we're all in the people business here. And we can still have the 10%, the very important 10% that is the content that we teach. But that 10% means nothing if we're not connecting with that 90%. So that was really where it hit home for me, man.
That's a great, such a beautiful story of describing your experience. And I say beautiful because it's hopeful for others to understand that you can tap into that side of you. And that's what is going to bring joy and wisdom and opportunity and everything, all these good things that we're looking for, the freedom, it's going to bring that to others when we tap into that, really genuine part of ourselves. Authentic, as you've said, part of yourselves. And I love the visual also of the pulling back the shag carpet there. It makes me feel good because I asked a ton of questions when I was in school. So I feel like I'm well positioned now to be doing this interview here. I've got more questions for you. So,
and that's the thing too, is that and I want people to get that, when I say this kind of stuff, you don't have to be this overly outgoing, overly charismatic, spastic energy like me to activate stuff. There are plenty of my clients that what they activate is peace. They activate stillness in people. I need that. I follow people who activate stillness and peace because it's the opposite of how I normally operate. And I want to feel that as well. So you may activate curiosity. You may activate some polarization. You may activate some inquisitiveness for you because of the kind of questions you ask, Tobin. You really activate clarity for people because they have to think about, oh, I've never thought about that question before. That's a big one. So you can activate any number of things for people, and it doesn't have to be joy or play or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk for a second about the who, because you kind of hinted at it, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. And I know our audience is curious, like getting a feel for you, the work that you, at least some of the stages or the venues, the writing that you've done. But who is the audience that you're really working with now? Who do you serve, and what are some of the outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my whole thing, I have a one-line business plan. It's a pretty simple business plan. And I urge everybody watching or listening to this to steal like an artist, as Austin Kleon said, and take my one-line business plan and make it your own. And it kind of goes off of what we were just talking about, is that my front-facing one-line business plan is to leave everybody I meet with at least 5% more joy than I found them. Right? That's my one-line business plan, because that way it doesn't matter who I'm coaching, who I'm speaking to, or if I get a job as a barista at Starbucks, I'm very clear on my purpose: to leave everybody I meet with at least 5% more joy than I found them. The flip side of that, though, the part that it's not a forward-facing thing because it wouldn't be nearly as inspiring, is that my real, true purpose and business plan, if you will, and kind of life plan, it's no real differentiation for me, is to leave everybody I meet with at least 5% less suffering than when I found them. And so currently the form that takes is working with people who are coaches, online educators, thought leaders, people who are the face of a brand that is doing transformational work. And the reason I say that this is the form it takes is that, I've had a lot of experience building coaching businesses. I've been a coach for 6 years now. I've done, everything from going to one-on-one to doing group stuff to, getting into much bigger level platforms like Mind Valley, who now publishes courses by me, and becoming one of their featured authors and becoming the host of their A-Fest, their big A-Fest event, and writing my book and just doing all these things. And I've now directly had hundreds of coaches as my clients and tens of thousands through different programs I've done with Mind Valley and all of them. But what it really comes down to is that the thing that really tears me apart is when I see coaches who have done the work, like they've done the work on themselves, but they've also done the outer work. They've gotten the certification, or they've gotten the education, whether they got certified or not. They've done the work to do transformational work with other people. And with all of that passion and with all of that well-intentioned goodness and with all of that eagerness and with all of that skill, they are suffering because they don't know how to actually build a business, and they're not supposed to, right? Like I was in tech for 15 years. The last half of that, I was in a management consulting firm. I was in IT consulting. I was director of engineering, helped grow that company from $600K a year to $7 million a year within the 5 or 6 years that I was there. Then left and started my first company that was an executive transportation company. We had the former CEO of Priceline.com on our advisory board. My second company was in partnership with NASA and the space shuttle program. I got an MBA. I did all this stuff. And this is not to brag. I say this to say, because then when I started my coaching business, I had no effing clue what I was doing. So if I've been through all that stuff and I still couldn't figure out how to build a coaching business, I don't want anybody else beating themselves up or suffering because they just don't know how to do it out of the box. And there's so much information out there. So what I've done, and again, going back to the whole joy and play thing, my entire angle on how I serve coaches is to help them discover and activate the same way I had to discover and activate what it is for me, discover and activate what it is for them that's going to truly differentiate them, that's going to make them competition proof, not competition absent. We're not trying to say there's no competition. We're saying you can be competition proof by truly being yourself and knowing how to integrate that in with the content or the things that you educate people on. And so that's what we do. That's what we work each and every day with groups of coaches and help them go from, some of them from zero to their first client, some of them from people that were doing maybe 1-2K a month to their first 4 and 5 figure months. And that's what we do. And we try to have a lot of fun in the process.
You and I have really very similar missions, Jason, and it's warmed my heart to hear that, because when someone is an expert, it doesn't mean they're an expert in sales and marketing. And I see a lot of experts out there who are struggling. They feel like they're a best kept secret and they can't make their biggest impact. They're not able to leverage the influence that they want in the world. Yep. Because they're from a business perspective, they're struggling along, and yet all the gifts are tapped up. So that very much that's our why of what we're doing with Book of Experts, and being able to showcase and spotlight folks like yourself that are doing the work and impacting others. That's fun for me. I love how you're doing it, because you've really laser focused in on the points of differentiation, which without that, you've got nothing. So
Yeah, it can be really hard to do it without that. And I love that the work you're doing as well. Like, I love that we have that similar mission, because we need as many people as possible helping transformational leaders. I mean, the thing is, when you look at people that are doing things in the world, I remember, I think it was last year, I was at a hotel in Vegas. I was there to do a talk, and I realized I was overlooking the Mandalay Bay, which that big mass shooting had happened at. And I did a Facebook Live for one of my Facebook groups. And I was just saying, like, this is such a reminder for me that we need to help people come alive, because people who are lit up about their lives, it doesn't even occur to them to shoot up a bunch of random people. It doesn't occur to them to do violent things or to commit terrorist acts or anything else. And I'm not saying that life coaches are going to change the world in that way, although they can. But if we really focus on how do we create more people who are lit up about their lives, we will have so far fewer bad things happening in the world and so much more contribution and service.
Yeah, totally. Stephen Pressfield has a great section of his book, The War of Art, where he talks about how Hitler was an artist in his younger days, and that drive within him was squashed and created a whole other outcome. So I love that. Jason, while I have you, can we talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that you see people making? Like, you shared your story and sort of those inflection points. What are maybe a couple points that you see people making that would help them today to walk away and just be a little bit better as they progress down this road?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many things, but I want to give just a couple here. So number one is kind of how you approach social media. That, there's this saying, we've probably all heard before, content is king, and I believe that. But if content is king, then context is the kingdom, right? If content is king, context is the kingdom. And I think that sometimes when people hear about social media, and again, well-intentioned, they're looking at people who are really big in the industry and kind of following what they do. And a lot of that, unfortunately, and it's shifting. There's more and more people who are truly service and love-based in their approach. But for the most part, there's a lot of people who have seen and this is no judgment, but have seen like the Tai Lopez's of the world, who are like, Lamborghini this and big mansion this and buy now and click here and do all these things. And people not only try that and then they're unsuccessful because it doesn't really work. Maybe it works on volume. If you get 1% of a million people who are clicking on your stuff, then you can build a business. But if you don't have that huge audience, it's not as helpful. So the first thing is I see people doing that and it doesn't work and they get discouraged. Or the second thing is that people see that and say, that's so not me. And if that's what is required to build a business online, I'm not going to touch social media. So I think understanding the context of social media is so important. The way that I was taught about building a coaching business, and I mean in the conversion, the conversation and conversion part, I was taught by my coach, who is still my coach to this day, and an amazing guy called Steve Chandler. And if you haven't looked at his work, go look at his work. He's incredible. And what Steve teaches is about really creating intimacy with people when you meet them out in the world. And for me, when I first started getting in and learning kind of that methodology, I realized I didn't really like going out to networking things. I didn't like going out and trying to find people in the real world, but I was super comfortable really, truly connecting with people on social media. And so the thing I started asking myself is, what if I use this tool of social media, not for self-promotion, but for self-expression? What if I used it to connect with people and build intimacy online? What if I treated it with the same love, devotion, and care that I would if I was introduced to somebody by a trusted friend out in the real world? And so what I want to share with you here is that if you have the lens when you view social media as, how can I truly serve people with how I show up? It changes everything. Because when you create content that's super hyper relevant to your people, and I'm not talking about salesy content. I'm not talking about like, my new program opens up, I have 4 spots left, click here to join. I'm not talking about any of that crap. There's a time and a place for calls to action to sales, though for the most part, we actually don't ask for sales in public ever. That's always a private conversation. But when creating content, if you can understand that the power of content is twofold, then it will change everything for you. Number one, every piece of content you share that truly comes from a place of service and value, it macro serves, meaning it serves on a high, big level to a bunch of people, even if they never work with you. Every single person who sees your content has the ability to be served by it. So it macro serves. And at the same time, it micro sells. And when I talk about micro selling, what I mean is that people taking in your content, at some point, the time will be now for them to want to work with you, right? At some point, there will be a now. There's a statistic that of the people that follow you, 50% of them will never work with you. 50% will never work with you. Of the other 50%, 85% of those 50% will probably not work with you for about the next 1 to 2 years. The other 15% will probably work with you in the next 90 days. So at some point, the time is going to be now. By me sharing content on a regular basis, when I say that it's micro selling, I mean that it is lowering people's resistance to the possibility of us working together. So by the time that the time is now and they're ready to jump in and we get on the phone and we talk about what it might look like to work together, so much of the like trust, rapport building, all this other stuff that we normally have to take 15, 20 minutes to do on a call, it's gone because they've been experiencing me through my content. And now it's a joy that we just get to connect and go right into the good stuff. So I know that's a big rant and kind of a mini masterclass on social media, but like I'm so passionate about the context of social media. It can remove all of the fear from it and make it much more coming from a service place.
No, I love this. And you've challenged me today, Jason, because I can't type fast enough. I've got like 4 or 5 different little, macro serving versus micro serving. We got that in the comments. Sorry, micro selling. Yeah. And then if content is king, then context is actually the kingdom itself.
Yes.
We talked about the one-liner that you shared earlier. So I've got a note in there to make sure you listen for Jason's one-line business plan. These are all great points. I want to talk for a moment because you've actually got a nice gift for the Book of Experts audience. I'll bring this up on the screen here for a moment, but this is actually a link, and we'll put this in the comments for you guys as well. But giving them access to your book, to your guide, I think it's called the competition proof guide.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And this is not a, there's nothing wrong with things like this, and they're called lead magnets, obviously, for those of you who don't know. And that's fine. I'm open to doing that. You can see there, I'm asking for your email address so I can give you more value over time. But the great thing about this is that this is not one of those like little 1 or 2 page little checklist things, which are super valuable, by the way, but it's not one of those. I'll warn you ahead of time. This is a 36-page document. So if you're looking for something like really, really quick to consume, this is probably not going to be it. But if you're looking for something that really delves in and unpacks a lot more about what I've been talking about here, this is a great thing to look at because I go really, really in depth into the 3 pillars that we believe need to be tweaked. And we being my team and just kind of our belief system, the 3 pillars that need to be tweaked to build a competition-proof business. And reading this guide alone will give you so much clarity on kind of what you need to focus on in your business.
Well, I appreciate you. First of all, it's very generous for you to provide that to the audience. I've had a chance to take a look at this, and I love where you're coming from it. There's a different feel to it. In the world of lead magnets, there's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of times people are signing up for them, and they end up, staying in Dropbox or on your desktop or whatever. Folks, you should take a look at this. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's worth your time to dig a little bit deeper. Jason, let's talk for a second as we wrap up here. Where should people go to enter your world? What are the best portals for them to enter your world?
Well, here, my home address is, no, I'm just kidding. So the best places to find me, I hang out a lot on Instagram and Facebook. I have a Facebook group for coaches and online educators and people like that. And I think there's a link to that somewhere in the lead magnet as well. And you can join that, and super fun. We share a bunch of good stuff in there. And then I share a lot of video content, strictly video content, actually, on Instagram. And you can find me Facebook and Instagram. It's at the Jason Goldberg, THE, the Jason Goldberg. And we can continue the conversation there. If you've enjoyed what we've talked about here, you'll love what I share over there.
Yeah. And again, I want to encourage folks, if you like what you're hearing here on Book of Experts, whether you're with us live or you're catching the replay, if you want to follow Jason, this is my challenge to you guys. Go rate, go review, go leave recommendations for people. This is how you make an impression on some of those people that have touched you. It's the biggest thing. It's the best way to give back. Honestly, if someone gives you something that you find valuable, go return it to them and build that relationship, because the content creators notice this stuff. When you're building an audience and people show up and they appreciate that, people will take notice. So I highly encourage you to do that for Jason, for Book of Experts, or anyone out there that's giving you the good stuff.
Yeah. And I respond to all messages. So if somebody sends me a message or a question on social, like on IG, slide into my DMs, you will get me responding to you. That I can promise you.
Jason, I so appreciate you taking the time. This has been awesome. You gave us a bunch of great nuggets. I think we could go a lot deeper, maybe on a future episode, or we'll bring you back for one of the expert panels. But you've been generous. You've shared some great information and some thought-provoking quotes that we got in the comments. So appreciate you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.